So thanks for coming today. Today I'm presenting on and having a conversation with you about a project to create the Upper Snoqualmie Resilient River Corridor Management Plan. This is a project that was funded by a grant received from the Bureau of Reclamation. It's just under $200,000 grant. It funded project research, outreach with the community, and ultimately the development of the plan. The final plan will focus on understanding, protecting, and conserving water quality and quantity for the Snoqualmie River Valley as a whole, but we focus in on the Upper Snoqualmie River specifically. And the plan and the overall project were conceived of to fill a need for a cohesive, holistic strategy for this important area. It's something that didn't exist previously, and the tribe is the best group to take on that challenge. If you folks have questions, this is intended to be fairly informal. You're welcome to, raise your hand, interrupt me in a pause, ask a question. I don't plan to monitor the chat. That's probably not the best way to get a hold of me, but we also plenty of time to ask questions and converse afterwards. But like I said, it's intended to be conversational. So I'm going to cover today these 4 items. We're going to go over the outreach process. We'll talk about how data was collected, how the Resilient River Corridor Plan was drafted, and finally, the outcomes of this plan and what I hope to see as a result. Beginning with the outreach process, the Snoqualmie Tribe's Environmental and Natural Resources Department engaged with the tribal community and the community at large to gather stories about how people connect to the river, how they see changes happening in the Upper Snoqualmie River Valley, and how they feel about those changes. So we conducted a survey and small group interviews. We received 61 online survey responses, 13 paper surveys, and 17 tribal member survey responses. We conducted a listening session with our tribal culture department, and some highlights from the 74 total survey responders. Top interests included the flow rate of the Snoqualmie River. People are concerned about flooding affecting homes and communities and climate change as related to those. Survey responders worried about development and they wanted to minimize development in the floodplain. There's an interest in increasing the buffer around the river to use that area for open space area for public access, while also allowing for natural river shifting, channel migration. There's a shared concern to preserve and care for the river, and folks were concerned about what they perceive as less water availability and impacts to wildlife, along with changes to the flow timing of the river. Interestingly, the community knowledge that we heard back via these surveys greatly aligns with and reflects the conclusions of our project data. The findings reinforce the recommendations made at the end of the plan for resiliency. Summarized in the next few slides are experiences from tribal members and Snoqualmie Cultural Department staff and proposed recommendations for how to increase access in 3 areas: the Snoqualmie River, the River Valley, and Snoqualmie Falls. The Snoqualmie Tribe asserts that tribal community access is an integral part of a resilient river corridor. There's an obvious connection here to the ancestral lands movement, which seeks to spread awareness of the Snoqualmie people who have lived in the Southern Salish Sea region since time immemorial, and share the significance of these lands and provide information on how people can help the tribe in respecting, restoring, and protecting these lands. What we heard reinforces the Snoqualmie Tribe's ancestral lands movement. For example, we heard that these lands have been heavily impacted by recreation. There's a perception that water quality is declining, and people experience the Snoqualmie River as having a lot of litter and trash. As to Snoqualmie River Valley access, stewardship and restoration of nearby accessible locations to harvest ancestral and local foods and materials has been brought up as a desirable resilient river corridor planning action. Signage installed in these areas acknowledging the tribal connections would combat the current erasure of the Snoqualmie tribe's management and relationship with the river since time immemorial. We documented a cultural conflict between tribal rights to clean water and food and having to pay or negotiate with private landowners to exercise those rights. Access to more pristine, productive, and private harvest locations upstream, such as in the Middle Fork and North Fork Snoqualmie watersheds, often requires passes from the landowner timber companies. Tribal members and tribal community members have observed that many local wild foods are decreasing in abundance and availability. These include salmon, clams, which are how the tribal community phrases freshwater mussels, steelhead, and wapato. Wapato being a native wetland plant with a nutritious, tasty tuber. Snoqualmie Falls access. Tribal access to the river is a challenge and is currently limited to public boat launch areas at some parks and a gated area at the bottom of the falls. The falls are accessible by tribal members only, but it requires a key to access the gated area, which can be a barrier as not all tribal members are aware of the access process. And the other side of the falls is only accessible by purchasing access to the Snoqualmie Falls Forest Theater property. Increasing access for the tribal community to the falls is another outcome supported in this plan. This slide will talk about research and data collection. That consists of our existing data review, fieldwork, and hydraulic modeling. A team of technical scientists also assessed the current state of natural river and floodplain processes in the project reach and how these processes affect water quality, water quantity, floodplain function, and in-stream aquatic habitat. The team identified new areas for field work, and so they took a closer look at corridor forest health, channel and sediment dynamics, floodplain connectivity, and revetments and wood recruitment. The team also completed hydraulic modeling. I should say thank you to King County for sharing their hydraulic model with us. That helped us complete that work and added an important component. The modeling work included a climate change analysis. It's another layer detailed in the plan. And we assessed how the conditions and processes of the river are expected to adjust in a changing climate. As to drafting the Resilient River Corridor Plan, the results of the hydraulic assessment indicate that floodplain connectivity varies throughout the planning area and that flood risk through the city of Snoqualmie is expected to increase under climate change conditions. As a result of a recent lack of a cohesive long-term management approach, the upper Snoqualmie River Valley is currently a disorganized, broken landscape. And this plan is intended as a conversation starter. The Resilient River Corridor Management Plan proposes 22 recommendations for restoration and activities to reconnect the floodplain along the different reaches of the planning area. We want it to serve as a community knowledge source and a discussion tool. And to support that, the plan invites others into the process. That's part of what we're doing here today. And we hope that it promotes a collective understanding of a resilient river for all. This plan reports back what was heard from the community and the results of the scientific assessment. Like I said, it's a conversation starter. It communicates to river and city managers, specifically King County and the city of Snoqualmie, that a more responsible approach is needed to respond to the constantly changing river environment. And the reason we want to talk to them is they own and manage much of the land along the upper Snoqualmie River. The upper Snoqualmie has faced systematic impediments to resilient investments in the river corridor. This is largely a part of there being a strong regional focus on and prioritization of funding the types of river restoration projects that we're talking about in direct salmon habitat. Well, Conditions in the upper Snoqualmie and in the project area in particular are directly contributing to continued impairments in the salmon habitat downstream. The people of the Snoqualmie tribe are the original stewards and protectors of this land, and the tribe knows the landscape needs attention. The Snoqualmie tribe will continue the restoration and management activities as it always has, and will lead the call for change in the river valley. To that end, we produced 22 recommendations to increase resiliency in the project area, and they range from low cost to high cost activities. How's everyone doing? Good. There are clear areas of overlap between sacred places and areas planned for urban growth, where good relationships and respectful land and water use management decisions will sustain the long-term health of the river and all residents of the upper Snoqualmie Valley. The Snoqualmie tribe asserts that tribal community access to the river and floodplain is an integral part of a resilient river corridor. We divided the project area into 4 reaches. This map shows those, moving from upstream to downstream, upstream being at the right of your screen. That would be the Three Forks Confluence Reach, the Meadowbrook Slough Reach, the Kimball Creek Reach, and the City Reach. And then I'll go into those in a little more detail. So many of our reach scale recommendations focus on reconnecting the floodplain. This particular slide highlights the Three Forks Reach. The channel is over widened in this reach as a result of a highly depositional sediment regime and a lack of a robust riparian forest to slow channel widening. There's nothing there to create hard points in the fluvial system where forested islands can develop. We found that groundwater gradients inferred from summer water surface elevations indicate primarily down valley flow with some flow into the channels from the floodplain. In other words, stream flow is gaining from groundwater. Stream temperature is elevated. That's not new news, with the Middle Fork contributing from about half to 2/3 of main stem Snoqualmie flow, with temperatures elevated 2 to 4 degrees Celsius above flows from the North Fork and South Fork, and above main stem temperatures at the downstream end of the project reach. The riverbank revetments in this reach are primarily along the right bank, protecting the road and near the bridge along the North Fork Snoqualmie River. The road is built along the toe of the hill slope, into which the river would not typically have widened. So it's unlikely that the hardening has been in response to the widening, which has occurred almost exclusively along the left bank into unprotected areas. Specifically, our recommendations for the Three Forks Confluence Reach include conducting geomorphic and hydraulic assessment of bridge and road crossings to evaluate site-specific impacts. In the Three Forks Confluence Reach, as well as some other reaches, and I'll talk about some of these later, we identified a number of pinch points that seem to be having, large system-wide effects upstream and downstream. We feel that, assessing what it would take to alleviate some of those pinch points and open up the river corridor to improve channel dynamics in some of those areas deserves some assessment and strong thinking. We recommend removing obsolete riprap and groins. We identified a few of those throughout the Three Forks Confluence Reach. One of the focal points of this plan has identified a lot of opportunities to improve alluvial storage. So I know many of you probably know what that is, but alluvial storage is sort of using the river-driven sediments that underlay the valley as a sort of a reservoir that's connected to the river and ideally needs to be connected to the floodplain through periodic overbank flows. And that serves to sort of buffer high flows and can buffer low flows as well to a certain extent, including by contributing relatively cooler groundwater toward the channel during critical low flow periods during summer when stream temperatures would otherwise be elevated. There's a lot of feedback loops here that we've identified. The over widening in this reach has created a lot of bare mineral substrate, which gets hot, and it's unshaded, and due to a lack of healthy riparian forest, which is these kind of feedback loops keep going, feeding into each other without some interventions. In any case, we've identified that throughout this reach, the Three Forks Confluence Reach in particular, there's a lot of opportunity to tap into the alluvial storage, and that's something that doing these actions like removing obsolete riprap and groins could really help tap into a bit. We'd also like to increase main stem Snoqualmie River connectivity to cool water tributaries. I think you can see my cursor here, but around 3 in this area here. In some of our field work, we observed this stream, in midsummer flowing at 6 degrees Celsius cooler than the main stem river through there. And so that can be, kind of tapping into those, the connectivity of those types of cool water potential refuges can be really beneficial for habitat. We may not be able to cool the entire reach 6 degrees in any short period of time, but there's the concept of increasing thermal heterogeneity over a habitat landscape is one that's advancing in sort of ecology, and we feel like there are definitely opportunities here that we could take advantage of to that end. We'd like to increase or encourage multi-threaded channel morphology. That's gonna, that involves channel and floodplain restoration. The idea is to create forested islands using cottonwood and willow planted engineered log jams and restore riparian forest, prioritizing the South Riverbank on that riparian restoration. That's shade related. If we have to start somewhere, the South Bank riparian forest seems like the logical one to start. That also happens to be where the channel widening is occurring, it seems, is into the South Bank, the left bank. There are some emerging forested islands in this reach. We recommend reinforcing those with engineered log jams. And we also recommend supplemental planting with conifers or potentially early cereal deciduous species, depending on existing conditions in the stand. Again, here going to floodplain forest health. And we recommend conserving and protecting those portions of the left bank floodplain that are well connected. There's a variety of land use statuses there, so and ownership. So we recommend bringing those into conservation and protection. Moving downstream is the Meadowbrook Slough Reach. The river in this reach is constrained with 37% of the banks hardened. There's the elevated rails to trails trail, the Snoqualmie Valley Trail. It bisects Meadowbrook Slough and crosses the river via an old railroad trestle that ends in a set of stairs. This happens to coincide with another identified pinch point here at this bend in the river, where we feel that looking at opportunities to relieve that pinch point could have a lot of benefits for the river. There seems to be upstream and downstream effects happening there because of the sort of impingements on the channel. Floodplain features indicate that this reach was historically much more dynamic than it is currently. The channel widening that has occurred over a small portion of the reach also supports that historical pattern. The riparian forest and shading are on the south side of the channel is sparse in this reach, with the slough itself almost entirely unforested. The overall, recommendations for this reach include also removing obsolete riprap and groins and restoration of floodplain processes within Meadowbrook Slough and the adjacent floodplain. Specifically, some actions we identified include removing the left bank revetment to increase connectivity with Meadowbrook Slough, revegetating and invasive species removal on the left bank floodplain, including around the dog park and some open areas that are easily identified. There's options outlined in the plan regarding rerouting the Snoqualmie Valley Trail. It's been identified by multiple groups as an important regional feature and amenity. It's currently disconnected. A number of people have wanted to connect it. And to that end, we outlined some options for connections where we can, not just, increase connectivity with that trail and transportation connectivity with that trail and recreation through the trail, but also at the same time, improve the river environment and improve this river corridor. Things to consider to that end include removing the elevated railroad berm from Meadowbrook Slough to the Trestle Bridge. It's currently acting as a levee, and potentially moving that bridge. That could be a part of that. Definitely on the higher end of the range of cost estimates for the things to consider as part of these proposals. We recommend construction of flood and erosion control measures on the edge of the floodplain. That would be needed as part of increasing connectivity in order to protect residents, city property, and infrastructure. The types of things we'd like to look at include engineered log jams and woody revetments or levees and other bioengineered approaches. Recently had a landowner meeting with someone who's experiencing erosion near the Meadowbrook Bridge. And, based on observations and conversation with him, it really seems to be related to these pinch points, in particular, this pinch point here and this armoring causing issues further downstream. So, this is kind of one of those things where we're saying, let's take a long-term, 10,000 foot view sort of perspective at this overall river corridor landscape and start to think about the series of projects that need to happen to make it work for the community going into the future. And of course, getting back to recommendations, there's revegetation needed. We recommend a wide buffer for shade. This helps give resilience to erosion. Ultimately, that's the source for large wood recruitment. The forest throughout the river corridor here is not exactly healthy. There's a lack of conifer recruitment and a need for invasive plant species control. This is a slide focusing on the city reach. The main stem upper Snoqualmie River throughout this reach is locked into place because of hardened banks. The river's constrained in between infrastructure. As a result of this channelization, the river is vertically disconnected from its floodplain due to its relative depth. Gravels are uncommon in this reach because sediment transport dynamics suggest most coarse-grained river sediment is deposited in upstream reaches. Channel migration rates capable of recruiting local sediment sources are low, due to the almost continuous extent of left bank protection and low gradient. And the river is only capable of transporting sediments that include small gravels and sand during one-year flows in this reach. There is an indication that gravels are coarsening towards the downstream end of the reach near the falls. This is likely sourced from bank sources downstream of Sandy Cove Park and is due to channel and slope adjustments from engineered widening and weir lowering at the falls. The city reach is strongly gaining with groundwater gradients pointed across the valley toward the river and resulting in lower stream temperatures from the addition of colder groundwater, despite extensive clearing of the South Bank riparian forest. August stream temperature is 2 to 3 degrees Celsius lower in the city reach than temperature in the Middle Fork Snoqualmie, and 0.5 to 1 degree Celsius lower than the temperature in the main stem Snoqualmie at the confluence of the South Fork Snoqualmie. We do have some specific recommendations for this reach. Some we could get started on sooner, some involve a lot more discussion. Those include relocating power lines. There's a power line corridor through here, convert it to forested buffer. If they can't be moved, we suggest converting the blackberry acreage underneath those power lines. It's serving as a source of invasive species for the entire area, converting that to a native shrub community since trees couldn't be planted underneath the power lines themselves, and planting trees along the riverbank where we can. We identified a left bank timber revetment over here. We recommend adding more wood to it. It needs a little TLC. We think that would increase structural integrity and improve fish habitat along the bank. In general, we recommend using bioengineering methods, woody revetments, and engineered log jams to reduce erosion rates in areas that don't have existing revetments, rock revetments. Oops. We recommend building a mid-channel ELJ on the bar adjacent to Sandy Cove Park. This would establish a flow split, talking in this area here. This would also increase shade and increase pool frequency and complex cover for aquatic organisms. We recommend enhancing the side channel habitat along the right bank floodplain to add additional habitat complexity. Inside the riparian buffer, 100-foot buffer, we identified a need to control invasives like knotweed and blackberry. Again, conifer underplanting, a need for willow and dogwood, where a lot of knotweed are on the banks. And there are currently 2 unvegetated river sand gravel bars that could use some plant recruitment. We recommend conducting a water quality and environmental cleanup on the mill pond. We suggest that there should be a recreational and river connectivity assessment done, which would evaluate the potential risks to environmental quality that exists from the contamination on the landscape that remains there. And we suggest developing solutions to improve conditions. And overall, we identified a need to improve tribal access to the top and bottom of Snoqualmie Falls. The Kimball Creek Reach includes Kimball Creek and the surrounding floodplain wetlands and water bodies which drain an approximately 8.7-mile area in the Snoqualmie River watershed. Kimball Creek flows through 3 different land use zones. These include low gradient, flat agricultural wetlands at the downstream end, and in other words, west, and an intermediate gradient, slightly steeper urbanized areas throughout the city of Snoqualmie, and then steeper gradient forested sections in the headwaters, much of which is owned by Department of Natural Resources and King County Parks. The creek channel was dredged up until the 1960s by the now defunct Kimball Creek Flood District. This resulted in a deep channel morphology in the urbanized section. Kimball Creek has impaired water quality with very high summer temperatures, greater than 18 to 20 degrees Celsius. It has low dissolved oxygen and signs of pollutants from roadways and upstream casino detention pond. Some specific recommendations that we'd like to see implemented include developing an overall protection strategy, creating natural areas similar to Three Forks and implementing those to help protect Coal and Fisher creeks. Those creeks provide colder, higher dissolved oxygen water to the main stem Kimball, and they're forested, but not necessarily protected. So we would hate to see those cleared and water quality suffer as a result. We identified some possible riparian restoration opportunities around Coal Creek near a past avulsion. Other riparian efforts needed along the Meadowbrook reach of Kimball Creek, where persisting poor cover over the creek exists. We mentioned the dredging that has the past dredging. There's opportunities there to place wood to add complexity and to retain the gravels that are coming in from Coal and Fisher creeks. We could also regrade the oversteepened banks, which is in keeping with bioengineered approaches. And if we're not already implementing these things, we recommend doing best management practices at the casino detention pond to help attenuate the impacts of applying road salts and how that is contributing to water quality into that tributary to Kimball. So for the entire project area, it's abundantly clear that it needs a comprehensive forest stewardship and management plan. Forest health will continue to decline without interventions. And as we go forward with that and start to consider feasibility for other projects as proposed in the plan, we should conduct a climate change and flood risk analysis to protect infrastructure and protect future investments. Now, on the higher end of the cost range of our recommendations, we have the mill pond. Cleaning up the mill pond is going to require a lot of resources, and it's going to have a high impact. However, there are reasons to do it. Those include, increased river connectivity to the mill pond could help with erosion issues in the city reach. But under current conditions, any river restoration actions that we would do there, anything that would increase connectivity to the mill pond could increase risk of introducing contaminants into the river environment, which is not acceptable. Cleanup is going to take a long time and it's going to be expensive, but it needs to get started and it has to be done. It's the right time for this plan to be published. We're going to continue this work and we'll push the region to change the conversation from short-term or emergency fixes to rebuilding the inherent resilience of the river and the surrounding community that relies on it and appreciates it. We're meeting with you today. We're meeting with decision-making stakeholders and managers. That includes King County, the city of Snoqualmie, and the city of North Bend. We're going forward toward publishing the final Resilient River Corridor Management Plan. We plan to include, brief summaries of these meetings that we've been doing as part of our outreach efforts. And we look forward to identifying opportunities to collaborate with you and others on resilient river actions and to implement them. And that is my final slide.